Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Saturday. It's Saturday, right? Saturday at ILHC. We are continuing our LED Talks series. We had a couple great conversations, or one great conversation and a great movie yesterday. We had the ambassadors, Frankie Manning Foundation ambassadors, which we filmed. We'll put that online if you missed it. I think a lot of folks were competing, including all of our panelists. So there was a lot of running around, but we had a really great conversation about that yesterday. And we also had the Chick Webb documentary shown yesterday afternoon. So if you missed that, I think there's going to be some DVDs or something for sale. So keep an eye out for that. Later today, in about an hour's time, we've got a conversation with the legends of Lindy Hop, which are, or who are, Norma, Sugar, and Jean, in a panel that will be right here in Salon F, moderated by Naomi Uyama, which is going to be great fun. So stick around after this. But right now, I would like to introduce you to this gentleman on my left, who will be talking about and going inside the music of ILHC, including some songs that were recorded 12 hours ago. 12 hours ago by the Candy Jacket Jazz Band. 16 hours ago. The Candy Jacket Jazz Band, Jonathan Stout's Campus 5+2. And we're going to talk about a lot of great music. He's incredibly knowledgeable. He's an old friend of mine. I've had him on my podcast, which was a really, really fun conversation about DJing and sound and music. So I encourage you to check that out. But right now, I would like you to give a very warm welcome to Mr. Rob Moreland.
Thank you. I'm used to being on the other side of the microphone, so if you can't hear me or if I forget to talk into this, somebody please remind me. So this class, it's an opportunity for me to share music that I possess but don't own. I've been running sound for the last 3 or 4 years or so after I was DJing for many more years. As I got into running sound, I got interested in, when you run sound, you can listen to any microphone on stage one by one, and you're the only person in the room who can do that. It appealed to me to record things so I could share the same thing with other people. So if we just want to hear a single instrument, like a guitar or something, we could do that. For context, let me just give you a quick tour, and then we'll go into some details. This is Spinning the Web from Lindy Focus, Chick Webb Night. Let's see. This is the full band. If we just want to listen to the trumpets or the trombones, we can take those out. Instrument by instrument. You can hear what the acoustic guitar is doing, and so on. So that's what we'll be doing for the next hour, is taking this music, playing it, and figuring out how it works together. Okay. One note before we can actually listen bit by bit through this. These are all live recordings. This is not studio recordings. And a lot of times these musicians are either sight reading or very much improvising. You're going to hear mistakes, embrace them, love them, be thankful for them. These recordings are also not mixed fully, they're not mastered. There will be times where one instrument is way too loud, and that's just because I haven't gotten to that yet. If you hear something harsh, I'll probably fix it in a moment during class. And it's also useful for me to know how many of you have a musical background, played a musical instrument, and how many played in ensembles versus solo? About the same, a little less. I mention that only because when you play in ensembles, it's common to need to hear the group as a whole, but also be able to listen to specific instruments. Difference here is we can do it to an extreme. Okay. One last note. I'm going to say some things that are generalizations. You're going to have tons of counterexamples for everything I say. This should be a starting point for listening to some of this music, but this is not rule or law. So let's start with instrumentation for bands before we listen to anything. When we're dancing to swing music, we'll listen to trad jazz, as it's commonly called. That's New Orleans swing from maybe late 20s or even nowadays. We have 6 and 8 piece small bands playing swing, and then there's big bands. You'll dance to all 3 of those types of live bands at events nowadays. For trad, the instrumentation is usually a banjo, maybe a washboard or drums, an upright bass, and then a horn section of trombone, clarinet, and trumpet. You'll find other instruments, but that is the traditional lineup for trad. I'm not really going to play much in the way of trad for that. Most of the events we have now have small band and big band swing. I do have an example for trad if we can get to it, but we've got about 40 minutes left, and music takes time to listen to. So for 6-piece and 8-piece small band swing and big band swing, you're going to start with, if you're lucky, a full 4-piece rhythm section. That's a drum kit, that's bass, guitar, and piano. We'll listen to examples of that. With a 6 and 8-piece band, you usually add a couple of horns. Last night's band had 2 pairs of horns, 2 reeds and 2 brass, but oftentimes you'll just have a 6-piece with 1 sax player and 1 trumpet player or something like that. For the big band, it's the same 4-piece rhythm section. At Lindy Focus, the big band, and tonight's orchestra, we're going to have 4 reed players. They'll switch from saxophone and clarinet, back and forth. 2 trombones and 3 trumpets. That's a total of 13 plus vocalist. So let's go through the instruments. And starting with the drums, we're going to take the drums somewhat drum by drum. Let's see what we're going to use for that. So this is Perdido, recorded. Actually, let's do Campus 5 from last night. Let's give this a shot. These are 16 hours old. I haven't fully listened to them, but this is the next to last song from the main dance. So this is the drum kit. And this is the kick drum. This is the one that sits directly on the floor. It's one where there's a head that faces you directly. It's shaped like this. You can tell that it's not doing a whole lot of interesting things, but this is fundamental. This is foundation for our dancing. You're going to hear these 4 beats, or sometimes 2 beats in a different type of music, or a different style of swing. Here we have 2 microphones overhead. It completes the kit. You're going to have cymbals across the top, a snare in the middle, and sometimes tom drums off to the side. This is the rest of the kit. Drums are pretty obvious. You can see them, you can hear them when they get struck. Let's move on to the bass. That's sometimes a little more difficult to hear. Jonathan, this is your next to last song last night. So just a side note, we had 2 channels for the bass last night. We have one we call a direct input. There's no stage noise. It's super clean, but it's also not very live. We often prefer a microphone, but you'll hear some drums and other things in it. Question? I'm catching the note, but it's just really dry and kind of dead to me. I mean, I realize I'm answering your what do you mean by live, and answering, well, opposite of dead. It doesn't, what I mean is, if you stand next to a bass player when they're playing the bass, it it doesn't sound like this. It sounds close, it's the notes, it's a little bit the attack, but it doesn't have the resonance, it doesn't have the air and all the things that you'd want with that. You're missing some frequencies that you get a little more this way. The problem with, hello? There you go. The problem with this, of course, is there's also drums and other things that go in there. So it gives us a chance to get both in there and give you the best. Okay, next is guitar. You notice, by the way, the bass is hitting that same 4, and so is the guitar. That's also Laura Winley in the front, or maybe a saxophone at that point. That's sax. Okay, let's hear those 3 together. So this is 3/4 of your rhythm section. I'm going to add the rest of the drum kit back in. So just a side note, again, gross overgeneralization. In the music we typically dance to, that kick drum and the bass will be in lockstep. The first time I worked through these recordings was with Michael Gamble at Nevermore a few years ago. He was housed with me. I played the recordings for him, and he had me solo out just the kick drum and the bass, since he'd been playing bass. And he wanted to see just how well he matched up with Russ on that kick. He sat there with his head in his hands for an entire song, trying to see, can I do better? Was this good enough? Did this work? And it sounds like this. Sorry. There we go. And if you can't tell them apart, that's not a bad thing. So I'm going to switch to a different recording to see if, when I mic smaller bands, I often mic the snare. I want you to hear that. This is Perdido from Nevermore. And this is your snare. It's doing pretty close to a 4 with some ornamentation, so you're hearing ornament, ornament. And that, to me, matches up with the guitar pretty well. So one of the ways I think about this is you have 2 low-end instruments. You have a bass and a kick drum that are occupying that low space in lockstep. You often can't tell them apart. And there's a portion of the sound of the guitar, along with that snare, that is often also in lockstep. It's a little less of a rule, but that's your top end. Ching, 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 ching. So listen to that one more time. As you can hear, they overlap quite a bit, and are in some ways indistinguishable, depending on how close you're listening. Okay, so that is 3/4 of the rhythm section. Then we have a 4th instrument that's kind of a different beast. It can play a lot of different roles, and that's a piano. I'm going to go back to last night. Last night was a keyboard, not a piano. For spin. 1 second. In this case, he's doing a stride pattern, left hand, which is that same 4/4. Adding back in your guitar. Your entire rhythm section. And that, in some ways, is enough to dance to. If you just heard that, you'd be fine. So, one of the takeaways for this might be, when we listen to bands, we'll leave humming what they played. This isn't what you hum. This is what you dance to, maybe. but not what you hum. So take some time when you're not dancing, stand by the side of the stage and watch those different rhythm section musicians interact. You'll see some eye contact. Watch the bass player play in lockstep with a kick. There's a lot going on there, and it will inform your dancing. At least it has for mine. I do dance occasionally. It's a rare occurrence. Okay, so on the flip side, let's take that same tune from last night, and I'm going to cut out the rhythm section, and you can hear what's left. Same stop. Same. There's a little bit of rhythm section bleed in there. But that's the other half of the band. You could generalize to call them the melodic instruments. They do much more than melody. That's typically your horns, trumpet, trombone, alto sax, tenor sax, clarinet, and some other saxes. Let's see. So let's go one by one through those. This is the last part of Dig-a-Dig-a-Doo last night. And I believe each instrument had a solo. So we can use that as an example to hear what they sound like. That's going to be Albert Alva on saxophone, Paul Cosentino on clarinet in this case, and Noah Hawker on trumpet, Lucian Cobb on trombone. Sorry, working and talking. Let's see. Starting off with a sax solo. I believe this is a tenor sax. And just to hear in context. Moving to trombone next. So I picked this because I love the way that Lucian ends his solo. I mean, we can have some fun while we're doing this, not just learning. Paul Cosentino picks up this. And in context. Trumpet. I think there's a piano solo. So this is the other half of the piano. Not always a rhythm instrument. It can take solos. I want to stop there just for 1 second. When I've chosen comp music as a DJ, for Lindy Focus and other events, one of the rules we had were no rhythm section solos during comps for recorded music. Again, general rule, not a hard and fast rule. The reason is that typically during rhythm section solos, you don't have anything else going on except for the rest of the rhythm section. The energy typically drops. You don't want to be that one couple out there in the spotlight who gets the bass solo. You got nothing to work with, and not as much to work with, unless you're fantastic. So let's take a look at that same piano solo. Let me see if I can find it. Right there. And I'm going to drop the piano out, and you can hear what else is going on. Other than the piano, you got a 4-beat. At least during the other solos. Let's try one of the other ones, like that trumpet solo. I'll drop the trumpet out. The piano is doing something called comping here and there. It's accompanying, if you will. It's adding more than just a straightforward rhythm. And with that, at least you've got a lot more to build on than a straight 4-beat. And then you'll also, in some cases, have instruments doing other things. We'll talk about harmonies, we'll talk about fills and conversations in a moment. But anyway, so rhythm section solos, we typically avoid for comps. Same thing with vocals. We'll have an example in a moment of Laura Windley minus Laura Windley. And hear what else is going on. So there's one instrument we haven't talked about, and I'm going to see if I can find a better example than I have right here. Jonathan, at any point you have you want to contribute, we would love to hear what your comments on any of these. If you hear a misstep or something you want to expand on, let me know. Yes. Well, I'll hand you a microphone. Thank you. Okie doke. Let's see. This is Lindy Focus. Did we get a guitar amp? So we did. Great. So this. I'm going to see if this is the right solo. Sorry. Yeah. Nope. This you know exactly where I'm going. Yeah. So this is electric rhythm guitar. If you look up on stage when Jonathan's playing, he's got 2 guitars. We actually have 3 channels set aside for him. The rhythm guitar, which you heard earlier, and he'll also solo on that. But that's a challenge with a rhythm guitar to solo because you're taking 4 to 6 strings strummed at the same time. That's a fair amount of volume, and often going to, Jonathan will do chord solos, but a lot of single note solos, that's a single string, and it gets quieter, so we often have to compensate at the board. Jonathan's got gear that compensates for that. It's another channel that's louder for those solos. That said, a lot of the solos he's doing are also on electric guitar, and we haven't gotten to that. That's generally for solos, but he will, right there, use it for rhythm. Let's see. Did I go to a new, I went to a new track, didn't I? I lost it. Here we go. Let's listen to an actual solo instead. It's more interesting. And in context. Pull it back out. So I wouldn't call this necessarily part of the rhythm section anymore. It's a melodic lead sort of instrument. questions, by the way? We sort of just been going for a little bit. Is this okay? All right. So last night, on Digga Digga Doo, Jonathan was playing electric for a while and then switched back to rhythm. So there's a fun moment for me in the middle of the trombone solo where he switches from electric rhythm, sounds like this. That's it. Coming up. It's not so much rhythm, is it? But in context. By itself. There you go. So I'm going to put, he stops the electric here. Listen for when the rhythm guitar comes back in. Can you hear it now? We'll go back to that and take out that trombone. Sorry, we're going to be right here. There it is. So listen to it before and after. It's a little empty without it. It doesn't drive as much. The question.
Does the reason it doesn't drive as much, is it because there's no sound filling that space, or is it because Jonathan is like driving the beat?
That's a good question. Jonathan, the question was, I characterize this as it drives better or more once that rhythm guitar is in place. Why would that be?
I think it's a little of both. There's a limit to which I can push the rest of the machinery. Like, it's going, it's on time, and like if it's lagging, I can try and put in, but like depending on stage monitoring, they may not be able to hear me as well as I can hear myself, and so if I do that, a lot of times it doesn't actually work, but sometimes it does, and sometimes I can be like, crack the whip a little bit, but I think more having it there and having the space filled and having that kind of part of the team, because you've got, like exactly like Rob said, you've got the bottom of the bass, you've got the bass drum on the bottom, you've got Josh's hands, whatever he's doing, kind of on the top, you've got the piano on the top, and then right in the middle is that missing place. And when that's there, it's like you've got 2/3 of the team, but it's not all. So when it's all firing together, then it kind of locks together even better. So I think it's more that it's missing than me being some great whip cracker of pushing it even forward more. But I was going to say this one interesting thing, because you mentioned going from 6 strings down to like a single string. So there's a little trick, and it's something that Freddie Green had developed much later in his career. So it's not necessarily the most authentic thing, but it works. And it has to do with the fact that when you have all 6 strings going, that's a lot of sound, that's a lot of highs, a lot of lows, and everything in between. And the space that you have in between the bass and the piano, the drums and the bottom, the foots of the drums and the hands of the drummer is this very limited thing. So if you would only play originally 3 notes, 3 of the 6 strings, and there was a little bit of space in between those notes so that it kind of fit in. And later in his career, he started going down to just playing the middle 2 strings instead of all 3. And then it was, in his later career, when the bassy band already had like 18 people on stage, there's even less room. So he was down to playing the middle note. And what I tend to do is, because there's so much going on, I'll kind of do those 2 notes in the middle. Brooks Perumo does the same thing. And then especially on electric, that's actually, I think, the key. Because not only is electric just kind of more sound, but it sustains longer. It's got this unnatural thing that keeps the strings going, which is the sound of the amp. So by going down to 2 notes, and maybe even like slightly higher notes than I was playing before, it keeps them shorter, and that way it's tun, 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 tun. So you almost want a pitch snare drum, rather than ring, ring, ring. But I will say one of the things that's really fascinating at Lindy Focus is because we're doing all different bands, going back and listening to what's on a Chick Webb recording isn't necessarily what Freddie Green of the Basie Band was doing. And like a tune from 1936 or 1935 maybe hasn't evolved to the same place. And so sometimes they're doing long notes, sometimes they're doing long, short, and there's a whole micro group of feel that you can get from kind of mining that, whereas I personally, in my playing, I tend to just be like the wholly short quarter note. And so hopefully at Lindy Focus I'm going to do a little more research and really sit there with some cans, and for Lunsford and for Chick Webb night really delve into like, are they doing long notes occasionally, and get into that.
And I think with Lunsford, you're going to have more of an opportunity for that because of so much of the 2-beat stuff he does. That's going to be interesting to hear. What you just said leads into an example I have for you in next song. I want to try something that we'll just do this on the fly and see if it works. When I think of guitar, or when I'm working on guitar as a sound person, it's almost two instruments for me. There's the pitch, there's the notes he's playing, but there's also the attack of the strum, and they live in the frequency range at two completely different places. Let me see what I can do. Give me just a moment. All right. Give this a shot. Okay, so this is just the guitar at the end of that song. Just rhythm guitar, rather. And I'm going to try to take out as much of the attack as possible. So those are the pitches, but it's not very percussive. It's kind of mushy, right? Let's do the same thing and now see if I can take out as much of the pitches as possible and see if you can just hear the attack. I don't know I can do this. I'll find out. Still some pitches there a little bit, but that's, let me go one step further. So those are two things that we can play around with when we get the signal in. If I want a more percussive guitar, then I can actually boost around the 2K, 3K range for those who run sound. Anyway, so the next song they played was "Sentimental Gentleman from Georgia," and I'd like to. I want to take a shorter version, then we'll come back to last night's music. We talked about the horns and reeds being melodic instruments, but there's a lot more they do. They interact with each other, so they'll play harmonies. They have this thing called a fill, and drums do it, and a lot of instruments do it. The idea is that if you are playing or singing a phrase, there's a moment where you're going to take a breath. And in that breath, somebody else makes a comment. Somebody fills that space with something interesting. So this is anybody familiar with Chloe Fioranzo, reed player? So this is Perdido from Nevermore 2015, and clarinet is wonderful for fills. It's one of my favorite things to hear them do. This is the tail end of Perdido. So this is context. So let's listen to that again, and I'm going to take the clarinet out. Breath. Breath. And let's hear just Chloe. That's the fill. So she takes that space, that breath, and fills. Listen to the whole thing together again. So if you're not watching the rhythm section do awesome things, you can always watch what the non-lead instruments are doing. You oftentimes they're just sitting there looking at whoever's soloing and with a big smile on their face. But oftentimes you'll see them catch eyes, make a little signal, and then riff behind or fill behind, that sort of thing. While we're on, any questions about the fills? It's a fun little detail. When I dance, that's often what I will be musical to, aside from the phrase, is there is that breath, and if there's an instrument filling it, that's great. I'll often take that moment to fill with some sort of dance ornament as well. Something to listen to, something to dance with. Okay, here's the beginning of Perdido, and I'm taking the trumpet out. It's gonna sound like Perdido. Everybody's familiar with? Nope, that's not it. Sorry, I'm going to take a moment. Jonathan said something about a long, short with guitar. This is Mike Faltasek on a metal resonator guitar. And it's not that. In context, has a slightly different feel, might change your dancing. Anyway, one more time. Okay, so the reason I went to the beginning of Perdido was for something different. That was Perdido by itself. When this was recorded, there were handwritten notes for the trumpet player saying, improvise underneath the theme. He might have used the word noodle or something like that, but quietly. And so listen for the trumpet, and I think we'll check it here. By itself, I think I have that a little quiet, sorry. Here's what the trumpet's actually doing. So I wouldn't call this a harmony, maybe a counter melody, but it's a new line to listen to underneath the melody of Perdido. And then he rejoins. So in context, let's listen to it one more time. So the interesting thing to me here is that listen how plain it sounds once you take that out. So you may leave a dance humming a particular tune. Take some time to listen to what's going on underneath and behind. We have 10 minutes. I want to do another hour of this, but we have 10 minutes, and then we got to swap over. I have so part of this is, I mentioned before, I possess this music, but I don't own it. It belongs to the musicians who play it. I'm just lucky enough to be the sound engineer who got to record it at the time. So I can't share it in any other way than this class at this point. I might be able to put some things on YouTube with permission later, but for now, we've got this. Let's see, what can I pack into 10 minutes? We talked about Candy Jacket Jazz Band. Let's just listen to them for a moment and take a quick tour. And I haven't mixed this yet, so there's no telling what we're going to get. Yeah. Third from last song. No, I made a mark. There we go. Middle of a song. Just listen to the horns together. Without the horns. be remiss if I didn't feature Josh Palazzo just a little bit. I'm going to back up. The very end of that song. Okay. I don't. I have your last 3 songs. Play it again tonight. I'll get it. But I do have a different example of Josh. Let's see what we can get for this. Give me a moment. This is Sing 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 Part 2 from Lindy Focus 2015. Just a moment. Let's listen to the bass. A little different from what we had before. Just gonna solo that for a second. So, take a listen right here. The rhythm section seems to get a little sloppy right here. That's the dancer's fault. What's going on is people in the back and front are clapping like nuts. One of the things you learn when you run sound is that 100 feet away, it takes about 80 milliseconds for a clap to get there. And that clap is based on something they heard 80 milliseconds before. So 100 feet from the back, their clapping is 1.5 seconds off of what's, by the time their clap gets there, it's 1.5 seconds behind, and so it's going to drag some of the musicians away. You got to learn to anticipate when you clap. I'm kidding. But it does have an effect when you're watching comps and you're clapping, and it does sometimes affect your competitors, depending on how far away you are. Get up close. So we are getting so close to out of time. Quick question. That's not on me, but yes. You can only wear mitts while you're clapping. Question? We're not micing the clap. So really quickly then, since Jonathan's here, I took some license when I mixed this one down. I mixed this down for you can hear this track on YouTube. There's a This is Ken McGee, lead trumpet, second part of the solo. Jonathan has been playing that entire time. This is what Jonathan's playing. Right, straight up rhythm. all hear that? That's just, that was, and right back to rhythm. So I heard that when I was mixing this down, like, we can't. I actually pushed it way up so everybody got a chance to hear it. It's a cool moment. It's another Phil, and he's the band leader, and what the band leader does gets highlighted. Okay. So we're stopping this in 5 minutes. And while I'm resetting the room, I'm gonna let this keep playing. So we'll come back to this because it's just really nice. Okay, last night, New Year's Eve, Lindy Focus. There was a tune, "Sentimental Gentleman from Georgia." You know, we haven't listened to any vocals at all. I'm gonna skip, and we get to hear Laura for just a moment. This is Moon Ray. Because we haven't talked about vocals at all. Sorry.
Fun fact, everybody kept coming up to me and Laura all week at Focus telling us how much they really like Blue Skies. Because Moon Ray, Blue Skies, and we never played Blue Skies.
This is Keenan McKenzie on clarinet, just absolutely killing the Artie Shaw seat. Vocals.
The starlit cover, use all your magic charm. Moon ray, let
Minus
your
Laura.
sweet
Again.
here in my lonely arms. Oh, once we knew the joy of girl in love with boy, but he made a toy of romance. Moon ray, put it.
We have 3 minutes. I'm going to cram as much in as possible. I want to hear this Sentimental Gentleman from Georgia. It was a song played at New Year's Eve. I'm playing it for, among other reasons, because, let's see, do we have it going? Oh, works better.
He's just that sentimental gentleman from Georgia, Georgia, gentle to the ladies all the time. And when it comes to loving, he's a real professor. Yeah,
Here's what's going on behind the vocals. So those are sectional fills. Full conversation.
nobody knows just how he's just that sentimental gentleman from Georgia, Georgia, gentle to the ladies all the time.
Sorry, trombones are silly. I do need to take them out every so often. I'm playing that because they're my favorite. They're really my favorite at times. There's a the locals. I'm gonna finish with this. It's maybe jarring. There's a local St. Louis band called the Gaslight Squares. Gaslight District was, Square was a famous district in St. Louis way back. This is trad. Same song, completely different feel. Let me get to that. Here we go. This, instead of bass, has the tuba. Instead of guitar, it has banjo. It has a piano. So like I said, this may be jarring after what we're listening to. This is the other stuff we listen to. But again, it does have the same, this is the rhythm section. Give me a moment to... And you could dance to just that. And just the lead instruments. Okay. So I just wanted to play that for contrast. You could hear same song, completely different feel. Rhythm section felt different. So as I reset the room, because we need to make sure there are chairs and tables ready for the next panel, I'm going to try to do that while we're playing the end of Sing Sing Sing, just so you have something to go out on. Thank you so much for attending. And as I said, this is my only way right now to share this. If you hear that I'm coming to your event and you want me to do this class, just ask. I would love to do this. This is fun. Cool. Here we go.
Before we get to the end of Sing Sing Sing, I would like to just, once again,
I just want to thank you all.
thank you all. I was waiting for that. And would like you all to thank Rob Moreland for that incredible talk. Like Rob said, he does this has done this in several places. I was really thrilled that we could feature the music and the musicians that are here at ILHC this year. Check those out tonight. I know you all will, but Jonathan Stout and his big band will be playing tonight. Candy Jacket is playing again tonight as well, which is a little bit of a flavor of that. But do not go anywhere unless you need to run to the bathroom and get a drink and come back, because coming up in just a couple of minutes is the Legends of Lindy Hop panel featuring Sugar Sullivan, Gene Fellows, Norma Miller. You can't miss that. Naomi Uyama is going to be moderating that panel. We're going to hear from these amazing ladies of Lindy Hop. Do not go anywhere and do not miss that. Tell your friends. Thank you all for coming.